one of the biggest lessons and keys to understand as a new EMT is when to give oxygen versus when to start managing someone's airway with a BVM. So when do we use oxygen versus when do we use a BVM? I'm going to share with you 4 different cases in this video, plus go over all this material for you. So make sure to stay to the end and you'll have this down for the rest of your career for life. Now, here we go. First, we have to understand oxygen versus BVM. So when do we just deliver oxygen to the patient? And then when do we actually start managing their airway and ventilating the patient? So if I say oxygenation, I'm giving you oxygen. If I say ventilation, that I'm gonna manually move air in and out, right? Okay. Now, the first oxygen device we have is nasal cannula. That is 1 to 6 liters per minute. That is more mild symptoms. But hang on a second, hold on. When do we give oxygen to the patient? Why do we give patients oxygen? It's in the vital signs. The SpO2 level is not where it needs to be. It's too low. It's below 94%. That is the primary reason why we give oxygen to our patient. The main reason why we give oxygen to our patient in the vital signs. Now, there's other what I call buzzwords on tests. There are other signs, symptoms you'll see on your patient out in the field when you're actually practicing. I'm going to share those with you, so hang tight for those. Now, to breather mask is 10 to 15 liters per minute. This is somebody who shows signs of respiratory distress. We're going to get into those in a second. You're going to see these signs and symptoms we got to watch for. Maybe nasal cannula has failed to raise that SpO2 above 94%. There's not a breather. I also have a mnemonic for you too. It's very cool. Now, CPAP, continuous positive airway pressure. CPAP is a device that's really, really amazing. The key thing to realize about CPAP is going to push positive pressure down to your lungs. Now, what does that mean and what does that do? Make sure and plant this in your head and let this stick with you. This is what CPAP does. It's going to open/clear the alveoli. Meaning, if we're in a heart failure and we have fluid coming up through our alveoli, causing gas exchange between oxygen and carbon dioxide to be really bad and have your oxygen levels be really low, CPAP, that positive pressure is going to push, and now we can clear up our alveoli. But also with CPAP, if we have stuff like, for example, asthma or COPD, right? Or even pneumonia that has junk or fluid infected in the alveoli, we're going to open up a damaged alveoli so it's open to gather oxygen, to get rid of carbon dioxide, then clear it from any fluid, or it could be pus, like infection, right? This is beautiful CPAP. So we think step 1, step 2, step 3. Now, if somebody is not alert and they cannot obey commands and they're really, really sick, we can't use CPAP. So if they're in that bad of shape, we're going to have to go over here to airway management and ventilation. Why do we go here? Someone can't protect their own airway. And I'm going to show you a foolproof system right now on how to always find this in questions and, of course, when you're actually practicing in front of a real patient. On NREMT exam, I need you to watch out for these buzzwords. This can mean your patient is very, very sick, meaning they need oxygen or they need ventilation. Now, I'm going to show you a mnemonic that you can use when you're taking the exam and, more importantly, even when you're out in the field to determine, do we do oxygen? Do we do ventilation? Based upon what we see, I'm going to explain it to you. First, these buzzwords. Okay, here we go. Weak, sluggish, rapid, tired, gasping. So, patients gasping for air, sluggish, weak respirations. They're trending the wrong way. Look out for these buzzwords. Your patient's very sick, okay? Now, signs and symptoms. These signs and symptoms right here and these buzzwords, we combine them together, we have a sick patient and we need to make an adjustment to. We need to make a treatment decision. Low SpO2 means we got to give oxygen, right? Abnormal respiratory rate. Let's say the rate is too low, like 6 or like 8. We got to manage that patient's airway. Just giving oxygen is not going to solve that problem. The respiratory rate needs to go back to where it belongs. We're probably going to have to manage that patient's airway, right? Big key here, accessory muscle use, cyanosis, poor skin, could even be cool skin, cool or clammy skin, right? What is the words per sentence? Right now, I'm speaking in full sentences. Let's say the patient is unable to speak because they're so tired, or they're speaking only 1 to 2 word sentences. That's a sign we gotta look for. Is the patient alert? Are they conscious? And also, what is their chief complaint? What are they complaining of? And the question shows you, what position is the patient in? Obviously, if I'm able to speak and I'm in the tripod position and my respirations are deemed to be sluggish or rapid, right? And I'm in the tripod position and my SpO2 is low, I got to give that patient on a breather. If the patient is, semi-responsive, right? And the respiratory rate is 8, I might have to manage their airway, right? So these are the kind of things I always tell my students. When you get that question, try to visualize a scene and think, okay, you're good hands-on. What would you really do next? What would be the next step? So look out for some of these. Now I'm going to bring it all together with a mnemonic, and let's go through these cases step by step. You can use this mnemonic right here to break down the information in the question for you to decide what to do next. So also, of course, looks great out in the field when you have the respiratory patient in front of you for you to determine, do we go the oxygen route? Do we just monitor? Do we do CPAP? Do we need to manage the person's airway? So the first thing that I need to just get off my chest and just remind you of is, if a patient is able to speak, if they're able to speak, if they're alert, if they're standing up and talking to you, you're not going to use a BVM with that patient. BVM, managing someone's airway, that is someone whose respiratory rate, is going to be way too low or way too high, and they're not going to be talking or responsive to you. If someone's able to speak, their airway is patent. They can control their airway, right? The SpO2 level, words per sentence, and labored signs. Let me explain this mnemonic to you. So the mnemonic is RROW. So I call it the pirate owl mnemonic, like R, okay? So RROW. RR, what is the patient's respiratory rate? Remember, 12 to 20 is a normal rate. If it's too slow, you probably got to manage that airway, right? If it's way too high, most of the time, the patient's going to be awake and they probably need oxygen, okay? This is not a rule, but hang with me. What's the SpO2? Well, the SpO2 is 97%. Well, probably don't need to give oxygen. You get where I'm going? Right. So below 94%, we got to give oxygen, but then we have to make a determination. Words per sentence. So first off, can the patient speak? The patient can't speak and they're unresponsive. We got to manage the airway, right? The airway is probably closed, right? We got to open that airway up, right? Now, if their words per sentence is in full sentences, that's looking pretty good. What if they're in 1 to 2 word sentences? I'm leaning, in that case, based upon everything else, probably you're going to need oxygen if the SpO2 is low. Right, you see where I'm going? Then look for the labored signs. Do I see accessory muscle use? What's the skin condition? What position are they in? Again, picture 2 patients. Patient A is sitting on the couch, speaking in full sentences, but their SpO2 rate is low. Their respiratory rate is normal. That patient would get nasal cannula. Take patient B. Their respiratory rate is over 20. Let's just say it's in the mid-20s, 24, 26, 28, for example. But their SpO2 is low. They're speaking 1 to 2 word sentences, and they're in a tripod position. They need now a breather, right? Now, let's say the test question, with that same patient that I gave you that needs an hour breather, that the patient's currently on an hour breather, but you have the same vitals. Nothing's changed. Their SpO2 is still low. What do? You give CPAP to that patient. Right. Now, what if we have a patient, respiratory rate of 8, the SpO2 is low. Let's say in this case it's 88, for example. They cannot speak. Their airway is not open. They're not managing their own airway. And yeah, they have sluggish, slow respirations, right? Those buzzwords. That's a BVM patient. And see how just with this mnemonic, I can go through all the different scenarios, right? So what I'm just going to do for you is I'm going to use this mnemonic. I'm going to split this board up, and I'm going to show you the exact scenarios when we do what. Let's do it. Now, here it is, all written out for you. So your goal here is take all the information gathered in this video. Now, the thing about questions is not every question is going to include all this information. So between the buzzwords, between the RROW mnemonic, between knowing what to look out for as far as signs and symptoms, based on that information, you then make a decision. We're hoping to get as much information as possible. The beautiful thing is when the patient's out in the field, we can gather everything. But on questions, we have to gather as much as we can. So here's the information based upon what we do. Now, key point to remember, at the EMT level, we would first, they say, what's the next best step? If we haven't done, for example, in this patient, no, it's the same as CPAP, right? If we haven't done anything yet, non-breather will be first. Let's say we've given oxygen and it's failed. That's where CPAP would come in as a next line treatment up. And I'll explain this. So first, here's the RROW of nasal cannula. Respiratory rate of 20, but we have to give oxygen because the SpO2 is too low. Still speaking in pretty much full sentences, and you can see a mild increase in the respiratory rate. 20 is a normal respiratory rate, but most people breathe at around 14. If you try right now, you can try after watching this video, try to breathe 20 breaths a minute. It's a lot. Even though it's normal, it's on the higher side. So this would be a perfect nasal cannula patient. Now in a breather, you can see it's the same type of patient as CPAP, because remember for CPAP, they got to be alert, right? Now, let's say, here we go, respiratory rate 28, that's up, 90%, the SpO2 is down, 1 to 2 words per sentence, right? So kind of struggling to get their sentences out, but they're still able to communicate and they're alert. The accessory muscle use we find in a tripod position, right? That's not a breather, a first line treatment. This is the same patient. If non-breather fails, we go to CPAP, right? Then we go to CPAP. So we have this stepwise fashion of how we're going to do, right? Now, BVM, respiratory rate is 8. Okay, well, that's a little kind of low. SpO2 is 88%. Words per sentence, not speaking to us, or not alert, or not responsive, semi-responsive, right? Maybe they're only responding to voice or pain. They're not alert, they're not oriented. There could be altered mental status, right? And we have sluggish, slow respirations. That's a BVM. That's someone who needs their airway managed. And you know what's interesting? We are taught in class with a GCS scale. That has a lot to do with oxygenation versus ventilation as well, because this patient's airway managed, they're not going to be GCS 15. They'd be able to speak to you and obey commands, right? So that is something to keep in mind too. The mentation of the patient was my last tip. Now, a lot of you asked in the comments about how to prepare for school, how to get through school, and how to pass NREMT. The first link in the description is a study tool that I give to all my students to accomplish all of that. It's called the Video Vault. Inside the Video Vault is over 480 videos of content, audio files, worksheets, practice quizzes, our community group. What I do in the Video Vault is take all the concepts you need to know to pass school at NREMT, and I break them down simply for you, so that way you just follow along with the videos, you follow the study plan, and you pass. I give my students lifetime access in the first link in the description, and I'll see you on the inside.